While on duty, a police officer spots a red car acting suspiciously and immediately signals for the driver to pull over for an inspection. Inside the vehicle are a man and a woman. The woman in the passenger seat is clearly out of it. Her eyes are glazed over and vacant, as if she's completely lost consciousness. Despite her state, the couple refuses to cooperate when asked to take a breathalyzer test. Just as tensions begin to escalate, things take a terrifying turn. The ring on the man's thumb suddenly begins to glow, and at that same moment, his eyes shift into an eerie, haunting red. Without giving the officer a second to react, the man slams his foot on the gas, tearing away while the officer is still desperately clinging to the side of the car. The vehicle drags him along the pavement with danger looming at every second. Inside, the man shows no mercy, repeatedly throwing brutal elbows directly into the officer's face. He is determined to force him to let go. Unable to withstand the violent assault, the officer's strength finally gives out, and he is forced to release his grip. He collapses onto the road in a life-or-death moment. This man is the father of Young-ho, a kind and gentle boy who has relied on his dad since he was a child. Having lost his mother early on, it was just the two of them, but their home was always filled with warmth and peace. As a devoted father, he gave every ounce of his love and sacrifice to make up for the loss of the boy's mother. He wanted Young-ho to grow up with a childhood full of affection. Every single week, he took the boy to church early, planting seeds of faith in God, hoping that faith would become the anchor to help him through life's harshest trials. Not only was he a model father, but he was also a dedicated traffic officer who always put his duty above himself. Due to the nature of his job, he often worked late-night shifts, leaving Young-ho home alone in a familiar wait. After that horrific collision, the officer is rushed to the hospital, triggering a chain of tragedies that neither father nor son could have ever foreseen. As soon as the tragic news breaks, Young-ho and his grandmother rush to the hospital. Standing in the cold, sterile hallway, the boy sees his father lying motionless on an emergency bed. His body is covered in injuries, and his breath is shallow, as if it's about to fade away forever. Beside him, his grandmother collapses in tears, unable to hold back the pain. The sight feels like Young-ho's heart is being torn apart. In that moment, he realizes only a miracle can save his father. Since he was little, Young-ho followed his dad to church every week. His father always taught him that if you pray with enough sincerity, God will surely listen and grant his grace. Carrying that faith, Young-ho ignores the late hour and runs to the church alone, with only one wish in his heart, begging God to let his father wake up. In the silence of the sanctuary, Young-ho kneels and prays with all of his innocent, pure faith. A priest approaches, sits beside him, and gently assures him, "If you are truly sincere, God will answer your prayers, and your father will surely recover." Young-ho believes this with his entire soul. He prays tirelessly, pouring out his heart to beg for a miracle. But the miracle never comes. Due to the severity of his injuries, Young-ho's father takes his final breath that very night. As dawn breaks, Young-ho, who had drifted off to sleep, suddenly sees his father appearing before him. In that brief moment, the father knows his son will face an incredibly difficult life without him by his side. So, he gives Young-ho advice and words of comfort, as if wanting to use his final words to protect his child. Finally, father and son reach out and touch one another for one last goodbye. At that exact moment, both of their hands suddenly emitted a soft, gentle glow, and then his father's silhouette slowly began to fade away. Realizing that this was the very last time he would ever see his father, the boy broke down, sobbing uncontrollably in utter despair. His father's funeral was held the very next day. During the service, the same priest who had sat beside Young-ho at the church appeared to pay his respects. The moment Young-ho saw him, the suppressed resentment buried deep in his heart instantly exploded. He lunged forward, snatched the cross off the altar, and hurled it straight at the priest. Wailing and screaming in pure agony, Young-ho could not accept the reality of what had happened. He had prayed with every ounce of his faith, and the priest himself had even assured him that God would answer his plea. And yet, his father was gone forever. He was left with one haunting, agonizing question. Why didn't God listen to his prayers? Driven to the absolute brink of grief, Young-ho could do nothing but stand in the middle of the funeral and cry until he was physically exhausted. The faith he had held since childhood began to shatter in a wave of irrecoverable despair. 20 years passed silently. The weak little boy from back then has grown into a mature man with a cold, piercing gaze and a physique hardened by countless battles. Of course, compared to his younger self, he isn't just stronger. He radiates the aura of someone born to stand at the very top. From a child who once cried his eyes out in a church, Young-ho has walked the harshest of paths. Today, he is a professional boxer, The sweat and grueling nights of training to the point of exhaustion have turned him into a literal fighting machine. It's the day of a massive fight. Yong-ho's opponent is a famous American brawler, while Yong-ho himself has earned a haunting nickname in the boxing world, the Grim Reaper. He didn't get that name just for his looks, but because ever since he stepped into the ring, he has never tasted defeat. This undefeated streak wasn't a stroke of luck. It was the result of countless years of solitary training, a price Yong-ho paid with his own body and his own will. As the match begins, Yong-ho's eyes happen to graze a tattoo of a Christian cross on his opponent's body. In that split second, his mind suddenly goes blank. Yong-ho's eyes begin to turn a deep, eerie crimson. His heart beats frantically, and a familiar yet terrifying voice echoes in his head. Avenge your father. Before Yong-ho can even understand what is happening to him, a dark rage nearly swallows his sanity. But after just one breath, Yong-ho forces himself to regain his composure, clenching his fists to drag himself back to reality. The match has only just begun, but Yong-ho quickly spots an opening in his opponent's defense. Without a moment's hesitation, he unleashes a straight punch with terrifying power. Every bit of his strength is concentrated into that single moment. The blow lands flush on the American boxer's face, sending him crashing to the canvas instantly like a piece of rotten wood. Before his opponent can even regain consciousness, Yong-ho pounces, taking total control and raining down a barrage of punches as heavy as sledgehammers. Each strike carries the cold ruthlessness of a man who refuses to give his enemy a single chance to stand back up. If the referee hadn't rushed in just in time to intervene, this match would likely have ended with a cold body left lying in the ring. After that resounding victory, Yong-ho returns to his locker room with an exhausted body. As he falls into a deep sleep, he suddenly finds himself standing before the familiar silhouette of his deceased father. The man doesn't say a word. He only turns his back and walks away silently. Yong-ho follows him, led unconsciously by an invisible force. The father and son stop in front of a cold, lonely grave. On the lid of the casket sits his father's funeral portrait, and beside it, a cross is placed neatly. The rage that had been buried for 20 years suddenly surges back with a vengeance. Yong-ho lunges forward, grabs the cross, and uses all his strength to hurl it away. But then, something bizarre happens. The cross sticks firmly to his palm, as if it has grown roots into his very flesh. No matter how hard he struggles or tries to shake it off, he cannot throw it away. At that exact moment, the cross in Yong-ho's hand suddenly erupts into violent flames. He jolts awake instantly, gasping for air. But as he looks down at his palm, a surge of pure terror rushes through him. The burn mark is real. The very next day, Yong-ho rushes to the hospital to have the strange injury examined. However, the doctors are completely baffled. They can't find any clear medical cause, offering only a vague conclusion that it's some kind of unspecified trauma, something that looks nothing like a typical burn. From that point on, bizarre phenomena begin to happen one after another. Every time Yong-ho drifts off to sleep, he feels a terrifying dark shadow closing in on him, as if it's trying to swallow him whole. The suffocating sensation leaves him struggling in total desperation. And at that precise moment, dark, crimson blood begins to pour from the wound in his palm once again. This nightmare repeats with increasing frequency. Yong-ho is forced to return to the hospital multiple times, but the results never change. Not a single piece of medical equipment can explain what is happening to his body. These relentless night terrors leave Yong-ho physically and mentally decimated. His training is severely interrupted, and his performance in the ring begins to show signs of a serious decline. Seeing his condition worsen by the day, his close assistant finally speaks up and offers some advice. He suggests that Yong-ho meet his niece, a young girl who once experienced phenomena almost identical to what he's going through. In the past, she had also visited every hospital imaginable, but not a single doctor could find the cause. Finally, out of sheer helplessness, her family was forced to seek out a fortune teller. Initially, Yong-ho doesn't believe in any of this supernatural stuff. He had abandoned his faith the day his father left this world forever. But these strange occurrences are becoming more frequent and far more severe. Faced with no other choice, Yong-ho agrees to meet the assistant's niece. When he arrives, he finds the girl sitting in the middle of a room plastered with talismans and charms. Though she is blind, she can see the numerous ghosts clinging to Yong-ho. Even though he's a skeptic, the things she tells him start to make sense because he has been hearing strange, haunting voices whispering in his ears. The girl explains that the reason for all of this is that Yong-ho's heart is clouded, which attracts many wandering spirits to him. She also senses that Yong-ho is carrying a ring filled with powerful, positive energy. And she's right, that ring is the only relic his father left behind after he passed away. After seeing the wound on his hand, the girl takes a handful of rice, scatters it on a table, and shakes her ritual staff violently. Slowly, the grains of rice on the table begin to shift, revealing the shape of a cross. According to the girl, she can see a massive cross standing in front of Yongho's house. She tells him that if he goes to that cross, he will find someone who can help him. The moment he arrives at the location, a swarm of crows appears out of nowhere and prepares to attack him. Terrified, Yongho quickly ducks into his car to assess the situation. Inside the nearby church, a young priest is reading the Bible, accompanied by an older priest. It appears the older man is the mentor of the younger one. The two of them are in the middle of an exorcism for a demon-possessed man who is tied to a chair. The two priests continuously recite prayers and make the sign of the cross, but the more they pray, the more agitated the restrained man becomes. His eyes turn a demonic red, and his muscles bulge with unnatural strength. Suddenly, he snaps his restraints and breaks free. He lunges at the elderly priest, pinning him down and cutting off his breath. In the heat of the danger, the priest presses his own ring against the demon's face, finally managing to escape its grip. But the demon quickly shifts its target to the young priest. It pounces on him, spewing a mouthful of foul, black blood directly into his face. Suddenly, the young man catches a glimpse of the demon's true, hideous form, and he's so paralyzed with terror that he turns and bolts. With the young priest gone, the demon turns its sights back on the elderly priest, intent on finishing him off. Even as his breath is being squeezed out of him, the old man's faith remains unshaken. He continues to recite scripture and pray to God with every ounce of his being. Just then, Yongho bursts onto the scene, saving the priest's life in the nick of time. As an undefeated brawler, Yongho isn't intimidated by a demon. Even though his opponent is supernatural, Yongho refuses to back down an inch. He goes toe-to-toe with the entity, throwing heavy punches without a hint of fear. Every time the demon tries to leap away, Yongho snatches it and yanks it back down to the ground. In the heat of the brawl, Yongho's wounded hand accidentally grazes the demon's face. To his shock, the touch causes the demon's flesh to sear and burst into flames. Seizing the opening, the elderly priest splashes holy water on the monster, successfully driving the demon out of the man's body. Immediately after, Yongho demands to know the truth about the wound on his palm. The priest explains that it is a stigmata, the same wounds Christ suffered while being nailed to the cross. He tells Yongho that he is lucky to have been chosen for such a divine grace. Hearing this only makes Yongho's blood boil with rage. Why would God give him this grace now, but refuse to save his father all those years ago? Suddenly, sinister voices begin whispering inside Yongho's head, commanded by demons, saying, "Kill the priest. Kill him now." Sensing the darkness closing in, the priest immediately begins reciting the Bible. Miraculously, as the words of the scripture fill the room, the piercing headache that was torturing Yongho vanishes. It seems these malevolent spirits are terrified of the word of God. The priest then offers to visit Yongho's home to investigate the situation. Once inside the bedroom, the priest prays, makes the sign of the cross, and hides a crucifix necklace behind a framed photo of Yongho and his father. As the priest finishes and heads outside, he runs into the young assistant who had fled the church earlier. The young man confesses that he is too consumed by fear to continue this work and wants to quit. The priest hands him a cloth embroidered with a cross and peacefully accepts his resignation. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a man steps out of a high-end supercar. Dressed in expensive clothes, he radiates the aura of immense wealth. A single glance at the ring on his finger confirms the truth. He is the man who murdered Yongho's father. His name is Jishin, and he is the owner of this club. At this moment, he's meeting with a mob boss to discuss a business deal. The gangster threatens to send his men to shut the bar down unless he gets a bigger cut of the profits as agreed. After the meeting, Jishin slips away into a secret, hidden basement beneath the club. He dons a dark, ominous robe, standing before a demonic altar where a human heart sits on a table. He slices his own hand, letting his blood drip onto the heart as he begins a forbidden ritual. Jishin prays to his dark master, declaring that he wants the heart of his enemy. Instantly, the heart on the table begins to beat. It has become spiritually linked to the heart of the mob boss. The second Jishin plunges a knife into the heart on the table. The gangster across town collapses, writhing in pure agony until he drops dead. After sacrificing the heart to the devil, Jishin receives his dark blessing. The gray hairs on his head vanish, and the wound on his hand heals itself instantly. This is the secret to why, even though 20 years have passed, Jishin hasn't aged a single day since the night he killed Yongho's father. Back at Yongho's place, things are looking grim. The agonizing pain continues to torture him every single night. Pushed to his limit, he finally seeks out the elderly priest once again. After meeting with the priest, the old man hands Yong-ho a sacred object, telling him that if he keeps this with him, God will protect him. Yong-ho is openly skeptical, telling the priest straight to his face that he abandoned his faith for good on the day his father passed away. Despite his words, he accepts the gift anyway. As a gesture of thanks, Yong-ho decides to drive the priest to his next place of work. During the drive, they strike up a conversation, and Yong-ho learns that the priest's young assistant was so consumed by fear that he quit the job. Now, the old man has to face these battles entirely alone. Watching the priest walk into a house to perform an exorcism by himself, Yong-ho is suddenly reminded of his own father. Right then and there, he decides to follow him inside, determined to use his fists to help the priest with the exorcism. Once inside, they encounter a woman who appears to be in a state of total panic. The three of them head to a bedroom door, where the priest draws a cross on the wood to ensure the demon cannot escape. Inside, they find a young girl sitting on the bed. At first glance, she looks perfectly normal. She even claims that her mother is the unstable one, insisting her mother was the one who injured her and locked her in the room in the first place. The priest places a crucifix on the girl's forehead, but to their surprise, there is absolutely no reaction. It almost seems as if the girl truly isn't possessed. However, the priest isn't convinced. He senses something is off and tells Yong-ho to jump onto the bed and pin the girl down. Then, the priest pours holy water directly into her mouth. Instantly, the girl's body reacts violently, and she begins to vomit up dark blood uncontrollably. Immediately afterward, she used her superpowers to remotely control the pastor's breath and throw him a distance away. When Yong-ho tried to restrain the girl with his strength, he was also pushed up and pressed against the ceiling. Unexpectedly, this demon could see Yong-ho's past. It began to prowl his painful past, driving him insane. He frantically tried to control his breath. Fortunately, the pastor stopped him. After regaining his composure, Yong-ho placed his special hand on the girl's head. Instantly, the hand seemed to burn the demon inside her. Then, the priest poured holy water on her to increase its power, successfully destroying the demon inside the poor girl. This immediately alarmed Jishin because the demon Yong-ho, whom the pastor had just eliminated, was one of his minions. After talking, Yong-ho learned that the pastor's purpose was to find Jishin, who specialized in collecting the souls and bodies of the deceased to sacrifice to the devil in exchange for power and immortality. Only someone with the power of God, like Yong-ho, was capable of destroying him. The pastor hoped Yong-ho wouldn't lose his faith because of anger. After the girl woke up, the pastor asked her about Jishin's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, the girl suddenly started bleeding profusely from her eyes. It turned out that Jishin had anticipated this and had organized a sacrificial ritual to eliminate the girl and cover his tracks. Fortunately, the pastor quickly recited prayers and performed a ritual to counteract Jishin's ceremony, successfully saving the girl's life. After the battle, Yong-ho invited the pastor to his home for dinner. The two confided in each other about their lives and work. The pastor thanked Yong-ho for his help today. Without him, it's uncertain whether the pastor would have succeeded in this exorcism ritual. Elsewhere, a boy was captured by his friends and locked in a warehouse. At this time, Jishin appeared and possessed the boy with a demon. He then approached Yong-ho, claiming he also had a similar wound on his hand. Not only that, he feigned pity and began warning Yong-ho that if he followed the other pastor, the pastor would exploit Yong-ho's power, making his hand wound even worse. Returning to the child that Jishin had cursed with a demon, the boy has now become completely defiant, wild, and destructive. Outside, two nuns are fervently reciting prayers. Upon receiving the report, the priest calls Yong-ho, desperately needing his help to perform an exorcism on the poor boy. However, Yong-ho's mind has been shaken by Jishin's poisonous words, leaving him too conflicted to even pick up the phone. Since he can't reach Yong-ho, the priest is forced to go to the boy's location all by himself. Meanwhile, Yong-ho is meeting with his manager to discuss an upcoming fight scheduled in China. As the priest arrives at the boy's side, he uses his sacred ring, pressing it close to the child's face. After a grueling struggle, the boy finally loses consciousness. But a moment later, the demon inside the child suddenly springs back to life. It turns out there isn't just one entity. Multiple demons are possessing this child. Back with Yong-ho, a waitress brings water to his table. When he catches sight of the crucifix necklace she's wearing, a sudden wave of anxiety for the priest washes over him. He abruptly leaves the meeting and rushes to find the old man. By the time he arrives, the priest is struggling immensely to cast out each demon one by one, and his strength is beginning to fail him. By the time they reach the third demon, the priest is utterly exhausted and becomes vulnerable to its counterattacks. The entity strikes him repeatedly, beating him down. Luckily, a nun uses a cross to protect him. However, the demon fakes a retreat before suddenly lunging at the nun, pinning her down and cutting off her breath. Fortunately, Yong-ho arrives just in time once again to save them. He slams the hand of God onto the demon's head and drenches it with holy water. Just like that, he successfully obliterates all the demons possessing the boy. It's a heart-pounding, breathless victory. On the way back, Yong-ho tells the priest that he no longer feels agitated when he looks at the cross. Instead, he feels something completely different. But unfortunately, that very night, Ji-shin performs a dark ritual to summon a hellhound to tear the boy's body apart. After sacrificing the boy's soul to the devil, he is granted a demonic fang. Upon hearing the news of the boy's death, Yong-ho and the priest immediately head to the morgue to investigate. As the priest begins to pray over the boy's body, the lights in the room start flickering violently. Under the strobing lights, Ji-shin is there, sitting and waiting for them. Consumed by rage, Yong-ho chases him out of the room, leaving the priest alone with the boy's corpse. Suddenly, the cold body begins to move and screams out for help. The priest unzips the body bag and sees the boy alive with a horrific wound on his neck. The boy tells the priest he is in pain and terrified, begging for a hug. The moment the priest pulls the boy into a tight embrace, Ji-shin appears behind him like a silent ghost. Before anyone can react, he uses the demonic fang he just acquired to stab the priest directly in the back. While chasing Ji-shin, Yong-ho suddenly senses something is terribly wrong. A bad omen hits him, causing him to turn around and sprint back immediately. When he arrives, the scene before him is devastating. Ji-shin is holding the cold, sharp fang to the priest's throat, his eyes filled with pure contempt. Ji-shin then tries to force Yong-ho to give up his power. He demands that Yong-ho raise his hand and recite an incantation to renounce God and the Holy Spirit. If Yong-ho complies, he will lose his divine power, meaning no one left on earth would be able to stand against Ji-shin. However, the priest chooses a different path. He would rather accept death than see Yong-ho betray his faith. In a final, decisive moment, the priest uses his own body to push himself further onto the fang. He chooses to sacrifice himself to cut off Ji-shin's path of leverage and negotiation. After the deed is done, Ji-shin vanishes instantly as if he never existed. Yong-ho rushes forward in a state of total despair, cradling the dying priest in his arms before hurriedly taking him to the home of the timid young assistant he had met before. Back at the house, the young man immediately takes the handkerchief the priest had given him, soaks it in holy water, and calmly presses it against the priest's bleeding wound. He begins reciting prayers and making the sign of the cross in a state of frantic desperation, hoping against all odds for a miracle to occur. Meanwhile, Yong-ho slips away alone and returns to the church, the very place where, 20 years ago, he knelt and begged God to save his father's life. This time, Yong-ho isn't asking for anything for himself. He has only one wish. He begs God to save the priest and not let him fade away forever as his father did. And then, a miracle happens. The priest slowly opens his eyes. His breath is shallow, but the spark of life is still there. As he regains consciousness, he hands his sacred ring to Yong-ho. In that pivotal moment, Yong-ho makes a final decision. This time, he's going in alone. He will find Ji-shin himself and force him to pay for everything he's done. Before he leaves, the timid young man gives Yong-ho the ritual vestments that priests typically wear during exorcisms. He explains that this sacred attire can amplify divine power, giving Yong-ho a better chance of surviving a direct confrontation with pure evil. Yong-ho dons the robes, steps out into the dark of night, and mounts his motorcycle. He first tracks down the girl who had been possessed to demand Ji-shin's whereabouts. Once he has the address, Yong-ho doesn't hesitate for a single second. It's just one man, one bike, and a wave of fury that has been suppressed for years. He tears through the streets toward Ji-shin's nightclub, where an inevitable showdown is waiting for him. The moment he sets foot inside, Yong-ho realizes he is far from welcome. A group of Ji-shin's disciples is already standing there, waiting for him. Their eyes are cold, they look like beings who are no longer entirely human. But as an undefeated fighter, Yong-ho doesn't flinch for a second. He charges forward, using his raw power and calculated strikes to drop them one by one. However, as the fight drags on, Yong-ho notices something bizarre. These men don't feel pain, and they don't get tired. No matter how many times they are knocked down, they stagger back up like soulless husks. Realizing that fighting them with his bare hands is useless, Yong-ho changes his tactics. He steps aside, pours holy water onto his hand, the one bearing the stigmata, and begins pressing his palm directly onto their heads one after another. This time, the result is permanent. One by one, they collapse, dead for good and unable to rise again. With the minions cleared out, another figure steps forward, a massive brute with an aura far heavier and more oppressive than the others. He isn't in a rush to attack. He is intentionally stalling Yongho to buy time for Jishin to complete a dark summoning ritual inside. This battle is a true struggle for Yongho. Every punch he throws is blocked, and every counterstrike from the brute is heavier than the last. Clearly, this isn't just another mindless drone. Finally, using every ounce of strength he has left, Yongho manages to seize his opponent's head. He slams him into the floor, knocking him completely unconscious. On the other side of the club, Jishin has finished the ritual. Without a moment's hesitation, he plunges the demonic Fang into his own body. He is sacrificing himself to gain ultimate dark power. By the time Yongho bursts into the room, he only catches a glimpse of Jishin diving into a pool of pitch-black water. In the next moment, Jishin emerges from the water in a completely different form. His body is distorted, and a terrifyingly evil aura radiates from him. He has truly transformed. He is no longer human, but a full-blown demon. Without a single word of challenge, the two clash instantly. The sound of heavy blows echoes through the darkness. But this time, Yongho's strength is no longer overwhelming. His divine hand is only enough to cause minor burns on the demon. It can no longer incinerate or suppress the creature as it did before. In the blink of an eye, Yongho is completely overpowered, tossed around like a helpless child. Then suddenly, the demon appears right behind him and sinks its teeth into his shoulder, leaving a gruesome, horrifying bite mark. The brutal attack sends Yongho crashing to the floor as his consciousness begins to fade into black. In his semi-conscious state, he finds himself lost in a strange, ethereal dimension, and there, standing before him, is his father. Yongho leaps up and runs to his father, throwing his arms around him just like the moment they were torn apart all those years ago. The two of them hold hands in a silence that speaks louder than any words. In that touch, an immense, overwhelming power is transferred into Yongho. A second later, he feels a searing heat igniting in the palm of his hand. When he opens his eyes back in the real world, Yongho's hand is blazing with a brilliant blue and white flame. It is both sacred and violent, radiating an aura completely different from anything before. This is where the true life and death battle begins. With this newly awakened power, Yongho is finally able to stand on equal ground with the demon before him. The two clash instantly. Each strike is a thunderclap of power with no room for hesitation or retreat. Combining his elite boxing foundations with this new divine grace, Yongho quickly seizes the momentum. Every punch is surgical, every movement carries a lethal intent. The demon is forced onto the defensive, its dark energy no longer able to suppress the light. Finally, after a relentless barrage of strikes, the demon is hammered onto the floor, its body twitching violently. Yongho doesn't miss his chance. He takes the ring the priest gave him and uses it to slice into his own palm, forcing the holy power to explode to its absolute limit. This is the killing blow. Channeling every last drop of his life force, Yongho delivers one final, devastating strike directly into the demon's core. Immediately after, he rips the demonic Fang out of Jishin's body and incinerates it in the holy fire. The evil ritual instantly backfires on the one who started it. From the depths of the dark well, hundreds of pitch-black, shadowy arms reach out, coiling around Jishin's body and dragging him down into the abyss. The demon is forced to become the sacrifice for his own twisted ritual, ending his fate in total despair. As the chaos settles, Yongho returns to where the priest and the young assistant are waiting. Seeing that the priest has recovered, he is overcome with emotion and rushes forward to embrace him. In that moment, it's as if you're watching a father and son reunited after a long, dark storm. Our story closes here with a sense of completion. Faith isn't something that helps us avoid suffering. It is the strength that allows us to stand firm when suffering strikes. In our darkest hours, faith becomes the guiding light that keeps us from losing our way. So, never let doubt or fear extinguish your own faith, because sometimes, it's the only thing that helps us survive. That's the end of today's story. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you all in the next video.